The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is sponsored by James Oliver Coffee Company at jamesolivercoffee.com. James Oliver is a second-generation family-owned and Detroit-based coffee roaster, offering 19 different blends of freshly roasted coffee. The company pioneered link temperature roasting, and they source the best beans from around the world to create an outstanding coffee experience, no matter which beans you choose. To start, try the Alma Mater blend. James Oliver Coffee gives $5 for each bag of its Alma Mater blend to the Detroit Public Schools Foundation. And don't forget, use the promo code CFSHOW, that's CFSHOW, to get 15% off your first order. James Oliver Coffee, available at select grocery stores in Metro Detroit and, of course, at jamesolivercoffee.com. Remember, use the promo code CFSHOW to get 15% off your first order. That's jamesolivercoffee.com. Hey, greetings, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit. It is time for the week that was. We are, of course, broadcasting live from the prison that is Michigan today. Remember, we are all in prison, and to celebrate, I have brought my jar of prison hooch with me today so that we can do this. After the show is over, I'm going to spend a little time in the yard lifting weights and then going to get my jailhouse tattoo of Gretchen Whitmer. So, it's a tough day in jail. Actually, we are in the bunker, the basement bunker, though. That's where most of us are broadcasting from these days. So glad to have you with us today. Enough silliness. We'll get to some more of that a little bit later. My guest this week, wonderful to have my friend Portia Roberson, CEO of Focus Hope, back on the program again today. Thank you, Portia.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, my friend Stephen Henderson, host of Detroit Today on WDET, and of course, Detroit Black Journal on Detroit Public Television. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Craig.
Devin Scillian, anchor at Channel 4, and that's television, kids. That's the big box that your parents have on the TV where they watch the long-form, boring TikToks.
And of course, I'm sorry, but I got to write you up for stealing sugar packets from the cafeteria.
And of course, Nancy Derringer from Deadline Detroit is here with us as well. Alan Lengel will be back next week. Do better, Alan. Hey, thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate it very much. Look, we are just a little over a week out from the election. We had the final debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump last night. All kinds of interesting stuff came out in there. And I just want to start with saying I was excited that we actually heard questions about immigration for the first time in this discussion, really. We had questions about environmental justice. These are things that have not been brought up before. Race questions have been brought up, but not in the way that they were last night. I thought the moderator did a pretty good job of reining in these candidates. And I'll tell you what, the mute button seemed to be one of the most important functions, most important things that we have seen so far, in that you at least got the 2 minutes for the candidates to each state their positions on things if they chose to do so. Not a great debate, but better than what we have seen so far. I'm going to start with Stephen on this one. You and I have watched a million debates over the years. What did you think about the way it was presented last night and whether or not we actually got any concrete responses?
I thought the responses were better because people had time to talk, and the president was not allowed to just talk over the moderator or Joe Biden. But his answers aren't any better than they were a few weeks ago, and he doesn't have a plan to fight the pandemic, I think, is the thing that comes across the strongest. I think if you were President Trump, you needed to go into this debate and make sure that the major subject, was not the pandemic. I don't think that's a winning issue for you at this point. There are too many people whose lives have already been affected. There are too many people who are scared right now that we are, on the edge of a second wave. And he's still digging in on the same points he was in the spring. And they spent, the majority of the time last night talking about the pandemic. And it really did define the debate. And I think the opportunity to move the needle for him is maybe on other issues. And he didn't get to do that. People were reminded over and over of the numbers, of the economic pain that people are experiencing because of this. I don't think it went well for him.
Well, I mean, there's no way to avoid the pandemic question in this debate. And I know he doesn't want to talk about that, but that is front and center. I mean, we're all sitting in our basement studios, or wherever we are right now. We've been here for months, and it doesn't seem that there is any real movement towards making this better for any of us at this point in time. And Portia, I see you rolling your eyes there. I mean, it's just,
But that was Stephen.
It could have been.
Not today.
But it has been before.
Right. Once or twice. Devin knows all about it. So, I mean, the thing was that, he could have used this as an opportunity to sit down and at least craft a decent response, acknowledge that maybe he's made a ton of mistakes and perhaps that he was going to do something different if he got reelected. But, of course, it's Donald Trump. So he's never going to acknowledge that he's done anything wrong. We're going to get the COVID plan when we get his tax returns, when we get a new healthcare plan. And we don't know when any of those are coming. In the meantime, as Joe Biden said last night, we're not living with coronavirus, we're dying with coronavirus. And it's basically disrespectful at this point that the president comes out there and says, we're turning the corner, we're getting better. Because people are dying every day. People are losing family members. And he's still saying this. Hospitals are saying our ICU beds are full now. And, states are running around trying to figure out, should they shut down a second time? And in addition to that,
vaccine is...
This week, there's a story from New Zealand where their prime minister, who, by the way, got reelected overwhelmingly, shut down in the very beginning of this thing, controlled the environment the way she should have as a true leader. And they are now no social distancing, no mask, and had one case last month. So, I mean, the optics of why people, I tweeted to a friend, I said, basically his response is, everything's okay. And by the way, I'm ready to let your kids die. Are you with me? He's like, open the schools back up. No problem. It's like, wait, really? You want kids to just die? Because his kid didn't die from it. So everybody's kid is going to be safe. And, their grandparents and their parents. It's ridiculous at this point.
It was interesting to me how casually he tosses out this possibility that, hey, this is fatal with only 1%. I'm like, 1% of the U.S. population is a little more than 3 million people. I mean,
It's also not true. It's 4%.
Okay.
It's a lot bigger risk than he made it sound.
But even if you put it at that,
we have to stop telling people, or either overtly or through implication, that if you don't die from it, it's fine. I mean, the chronic conditions that are continuing or that are popping up in people who had COVID are terrifying. This isn't the flu where you get over it 100%. I mean, some people do, but quite a lot of people live through it with either that long haul syndrome or weird vascular stuff, inflammation. And, I mean, this is a novel disease. We don't know enough about it to just act as though this is something that, we can just blow off.
Well, and Devin, I mean, this also dovetails with the discussion we're having over healthcare right now that dominated the discussion about whether or not Amy Coney Barrett was going to be confirmed to the Supreme Court. It's dominated the discussion about coronavirus and what happens to all these people that now have pre-existing conditions. And as we witnessed on your show last week with Senate candidate John James and with the president last night, there is no plan to replace Obamacare if indeed the Supreme Court rules it unconstitutional. They just cannot get around a message on this that's cohesive in any way.
John James kind of took a little bit of a viral bath on that. But I would agree with you. That wasn't just about John James. That's really the broader Republican Party that really has had about a decade here to come up with their own way forward. And it isn't there. And my suspicion that I have been developing now for a couple of years, and I think Donald Trump is starting to find that this is true too. And this is why he hasn't been able to deliver a plan, because once you've promised that you're going to cover people who have pre-existing conditions. And you're right, Craig, that's a number of people that now keeps growing every time we talk about a COVID case. Once you commit to that, you start to find that the only way you can afford to do that is by forcing everybody to be in the plan. It's the only way you can amortize the cost. And by the way, that's also one of the things that keeps getting lost. When people say that they are going to cover people with pre-existing conditions, that is not the same as saying what Obamacare does, which means that you can't charge people a premium for that coverage. Lots of insurance companies are happy to cover somebody who has a big family history of cancer and is maybe, but you'll never be able to afford the policy. So that's the trick, and that's why what I have sort of come to the conclusion. And if an economist or a healthcare expert can dissuade me of this notion, I'd be happy to listen. But everything that I have read and come to understand about the Affordable Care Act now is that it is synonymous with coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, which now most Americans have come to believe is boilerplate. They're not accepting a healthcare plan that does anything less than that. And so that's that's why it took so doggone long. Nancy, go ahead. I was
just going to say, the reason that the Republicans haven't come up with a better plan is because this is their plan, or the Obamacare was their plan. I mean, we keep forgetting this.
It was
idea it came out of the Heritage Foundation, the Heritage Institute, whatever. And, it was lightly adapted by Mitt Romney for Massachusetts, and it was adapted by Barack Obama and the Democrats in 2008, 2008, yeah, 08, 09. And it was, and it's if you leave it alone, and like you said, Devin, it drives me crazy to hear him say, well, I got rid of the individual mandate. And it's like, that's like telling somebody, I got your new car, honey, but we don't have to pay for it. I mean, that individual mandate is how it's paid for.
It is the glue.
Right, Devin. So.
And one thing, though, that I will point out is this is not to suggest that there is unanimity among Democrats about what to do with health care.
Of course not.
Oh, God, no.
You've got a whole bunch of Democrats who do want to see single payer, universal care, like the rest of the world. And to Portia's point, by the way, earlier, somebody asked me last week who I was voting for. I said I was writing in Jacinda Ardern, who's the Prime Minister of New Zealand. But John Dingell began every session of Congress during his long history in that august body by introducing universal care. That's what he had in mind and had to settle for Obamacare. And if the people who want to make universal care want to make that argument, you're never going to have a better time in the middle of a pandemic. And yet I don't hear a lot of serious discussion right now about would it be better if everybody was under the same umbrella, if only for record keeping, if only so that we knew what everybody's healthcare record was and they were all collated together so that we had a better understanding of what was happening on the ground and in homes and hospitals all over the country.
One of the things that gets lost in this debate because of the politics, and it becomes a political discussion, is the history here. There has never been an instance where the government has created a benefit for the masses of Americans and then pulled back on it. There's always been the threat of it, right? Social Security. Republicans for years, for decades, talked about, we're going to get rid of that. That's a bad idea. It's too expensive. People do better on their own. There's no way to get rid of that. I mean, you couldn't do it. The public wouldn't withstand the loss of something like that. And this was the fear that Republicans had back in 2009 and 2010 when this was being discussed. This was their last battle. If they lost then and people got the things that were being extended in the Affordable Care Act, they were never going to be able to get rid of them. They know that. And the proof is that they had complete control of the government for the first 2 years of the Trump presidency, and they didn't get rid of it, right? They had every opportunity to just overturn it, vote it out.
Well, John McCain's last real political move was that thumbs down at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And he did the right thing. I mean, you can't just disrupt the system and then hope it all just falls back into place the way that it should. But, one of the things President Trump said last night about this is that, hey, he's, Joe Biden wants to eliminate private insurance, which Joe Biden has not said. Obviously, Bernie Sanders has said that, and some of the other more liberal members of Congress. But he said, people love their private health insurance. And I thought to myself, okay, there's one thing that I can say for sure. Nobody loves their health care. It's confusing. It's difficult. You got expensive network issues. You got doctors. It's really expensive and getting more expensive all the time. Nobody loves their health care. They want it to be simplified. They want it to actually work and cover their damn bills. That's what they want. Now, if somebody were to come forward with a plan and say, here's what we need. It's basic, and then you can buy add-ons if you want. I think that's something that people would accept. Some sort of base level of basic coverage for everybody. And you can then buy on if you have a little bit more money and you want to buy for more expensive stuff, go for it. But
like Medicare.
Why is that so unreasonable? Yes,
well,
Medicare.
We've also arrived at a point where I understand why healthcare began as a jobs benefit many, many decades ago. I get that. It makes no sense to me now that for your healthcare to only be as good as the job that you have. And Portia, I'd love to hear you speak to this because so many people now go into jobs where it's not even being offered to them as an option. And yet we got a lot of people that act like the old system is fine.
Well, and, we have people that come to the job and we offer it, but they can't afford it still, even with the job, right?
Even
like
through their job.
The bills that they're going to get make it too expensive. So we're constantly evaluating how it works. But I tell everybody the story of when I first started practicing law. I was in private practice. I would sign up through, like, Paul Grobel was the company that offered the insurance during that time. I would sign up. I'd get my annual physical, and you had to sign up at a 3-month point. So it was so expensive. I would sign up, and then I would let it lapse. And I literally would, just go on the hopes that, nothing happened to me, right? And if it were, unfortunately, I probably would have bankrupted my parents trying to make sure that I was okay. But, this idea that, people either don't want it or are lazy who don't have it because they don't have a job. I was working every day. I was trying cases in a courtroom and I couldn't afford health insurance. I would do it for 3 months and then I would let it lapse and I would just pray that I got through it. And I did that for 8 years. Because I couldn't afford health insurance in addition to bills and being in a private practice and, only having, I basically used to say I ate what I killed. So it was just not practical for me. So, that's what private practice is like, pretty much. It is amazing to me, though, that in America, this country that we have touted as the best place in the world, will not provide health care for all of its citizens. We have not figured out a way to make sure that people can go to the doctor and do so without worrying that the bills will be too extreme, even though we know that on the other end of that, when people don't ever get to do preventative health care early on, it costs us way more when they go into an emergency room at the end of their lives or, once a disease is ravaging their body or whatever the case might be, it costs us way more. And it is amazing to me that it's political, but now masks are political. So, why could I be surprised? People want to use masks to keep us safe. So,
and I gotta say, I can't think of any CEO outside of CEOs of insurance companies that wouldn't love to ditch healthcare from their company's, bottom line. It's such a cluster for them to deal with this. And think about how many people in a major corporation like a General Motors work solely on the healthcare of the employees. It's massive. But
we're in open enrollment at Focus Hope right now, and I am they're like, you gotta go in, and even if you're not changing, you gotta go in the system portion and approve what you have. And I literally have not done. They're like, you have till 11:59 at night. I'm the CEO, and I'm setting the worst example. And the reason why is because I don't understand it. I don't want to go in it. I'm not sure if I have the right thing. I got a bunch of bills from last year that I was like, well, how am I still getting a couple $100 bill from one annual exam? What did the insurance pay for? They pay for $5. And then there's this thing where you can ask the hospital, right, they pay for it. It's ridiculous. And so I know that from my standpoint, I avoid dealing with it. So I can only imagine people who have less capability in terms of dealing with this stuff, how they feel when they go into their healthcare system to try and figure out what the heck is going on.
Well, Nancy said General Motors, and remember when that became the joke. General Motors used to be a car company, then they become a company that made cars so that they could provide health care for their employees.
Right. Yeah. I remember my former colleague Ron French wrote a great series for the Detroit News when he worked there about healthcare at GM, and they were talking about how their pharmacy benefits manager at GM is able to tell what drugs are advertising based on the number of prescriptions that are coming in that the company is picking up the cost for. So it's like, oh, they must be advertising that Viagra this month.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to start taking a bunch of prescription drugs that I see on television because apparently my life will be incredibly better based on that. I'm going to be riding my bike again. I'm going to be out there, playing with grandkids that I don't have yet. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, watch those side effects, though.
That's exactly right. All right, let's move on for a second. Because I should turn off all your cameras so I can't see who's in the room. I can't see who's in the room, but I can say this.
Keep your hands where we can see them, Craig.
I'm the least racist person. I'm the least racist person on the screen right now.
Stephen and I are out by virtue of being Black people. Like, we just don't even get this. We don't get the right. I mean, he literally told Kristen Welker he was the least racist person in the room. I'm like,
I saw that.
Woman asked you the question. She might be a little less racist than you, but hey, maybe not. I don't know. So I mean, like, Nancy, you and Devin and Craig can fight this out. Stephen and I are automatically more racist.
We're good on this.
Because I'm sure the two of you love having somebody like Donald Trump tell you, what racism is and isn't.
Yeah.
He's
how much
also
he's done for us.
Well,
let me just take a minute to thank Donald Trump for all he's done for Black America.
Well, and let's talk about this for just a second, because I mean, Stephen, when you're watching this, are you laughing? Are you pissed off? I mean, what are you thinking when the president says, "I've done more for Black people than anybody since Abraham Lincoln, maybe even more"? He has said that in the past.
So I'm not really anymore thinking about him. I mean, he's been doing this a really long time, and I'm past the point where I let it make me angry. What I'm thinking about when he's saying that are the people who are watching, and the people who that's resonating with. And it's not a small number of Americans. This morning on the radio show, we had groups of voter panels we've been doing on Fridays, just asking people to come in and talk about how they're making decisions. And we had a really nice woman from northern Macomb on, and she talked about how she voted for Barack Obama twice, and then she voted for Donald Trump in 2016, and she plans to vote for him again. And I asked her about the things that he said and done to lean into racism and systemic inequality over the last couple of years. And what she said to me just blew my mind. She said she understood those things. She understood how important those things were to me, but those things don't affect her, she said. And she's got to make her decisions based on what will be good for her and her family. So the economy matters. So education, other kinds of things. Systemic racism doesn't weigh into her decision at all. And I think when the president is intoning the way he is about this kind of stuff, talking about all the great things he's done for Black people, downplaying the fact that he won't disavow white supremacy, or saying crazy things about Cory Booker coming to, live in suburban white women's homes or something, that he is talking to that voter that I was talking to this morning. And that's what bothers me. That's what concerns me, is this stuff plays, and it plays with far more people than it should in 2020.
Her 401k is doing great, I bet, right?
Yeah, right.
Did she mention that?
Well,
Yeah.
right now it's not.
Yeah, well.
But it probably was before March.
Right.
I think that saddens me more than whatever Donald Trump says, is that she doesn't see any relationship to her place in this country, in northern Macomb County, on her block, her children's school, to systemic racism and what it means in terms of the world that she's raising children in, that she doesn't see any connection between that. Side note, if any black man is moving into your house, if Cory Booker's the one, you're gonna be okay. Like
he's a handsome man.
You got 5 bigger issues. Like, if black men are just moving into your house, Cory Booker moving in, you'll be okay.
That's okay with me. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it is definitely more sobering to me to hear Stephen talk about that voter, and the fact that she just sees no relationship to her life to, systemic inequality and racism. Like, she just does not get that this country and everything that she probably has privilege to, minorities of all colors have played into that, the success of this country. And she just does not see that in terms of the life that she's now afforded in many ways. And so, and I think, like Stephen said, there are a lot of people out there who feel that way. It's not my issue. We see that over and over and over again. If it doesn't, it's like in law school, they talk about not in my backyard. If it's not in my backyard, then I don't It doesn't have anything to do with me. I don't care.
Well, that brings up. Oh, go ahead, Nancy, and then
I was going to go off on a philosophical tangent, but I'm always struck by how in Europe they feel a little more cohesiveness, I think, as a society, and I think in individual countries, and I think part of it comes from them having fought World War II on their ground, and we didn't. And part of it, I think, also is that
I think I froze.
America is so much more tribal, the old melting pot thing, when it's a tossed salad or whatever. And it's just, there's always going to be somebody who's going to say, as a fill-in-the-blank American, I object to the other fill-in-the-blank Americans getting something that, is not directly payable to me for whatever reason, So you end up with like that. But anyway, go ahead, Craig.
Well,
sorry.
The NIMBY question was an interesting one because they did bring up the issue of environmental racism in the debate last night. And I thought the president's answer was, one, incredibly tone deaf. He just said, well, hey, those people don't care because they've got jobs. And that's basically what his answer was when she was talking about people living. You think about the people in Southwest Detroit living near the Marathon refinery and everything.
My kid has asthma, but thank God I have a job. So
that was exactly it. Well, hey, those people have jobs, so it's okay. And I mean, no, this is a real problem, and it's not something that's just going to go away because somebody has a job. And I'm trying to figure out, what it's going to take to get people to actually take a look at some of these issues and realize that this is something that is disproportionate, that this is showing off the inequality in our society, that this is something that predominantly impacts low income and minority people. It doesn't make any sense to just pretend that it's not a problem, which is what it seemed like the president was trying to do last night.
I'll tell you what I think will change it, and I don't want to dominate, but if you made mention of lower class, I've always maintained that if again, and I think I may have said this before on this show, if people in the Appalachian Mountains who he sold coal jobs to in 2016 realize that they have just as much in common with people living in Southwest Detroit near the Marathon refinery, if they decided to, instead of looking at where they're different, which is really only skin tone, right, skin color, and realize that from a lower socioeconomic status, they are dealing with the same sort of pains and ills. If they decided to say enough is enough, then you'd see a change. The biggest fallacy created, and I always say, the Glenn Becks, the Rush Limbaughs, that group have the biggest thing they've done, which you got to give them credit for doing, is they convinced poor white Americans that they had more in common with a guy flying on a private plane and buying 2,000 pills at one time to feed his opioid addiction than they did with urban Americans who they are living in the same kind of situations. And as long as you can push that divide through, and I think maybe it was Lyndon Johnson or somebody who mentioned this, that like, as long as you can be better than, or you can use that in politics to be better than Black folks, then you can win on that. And that's what the Republican Party has done. They've created this sense of like, it's so great for white Americans, or we'll make it better, or you're better than somebody else. And they continue to impress upon people that divide. And so as long as those two groups don't realize this is as much a race issue as it is a class issue, I don't know that it changes.
As somebody who lives in one of the 5 gross points and the one that is generally ranked at the bottom of the prestigiousness of it, I can absolutely attest for that argument.
At least I don't live in the woods.
Well, it's really interesting to me that we have a president who right now, and I've never heard anybody make this, I don't think, this is the kind of thing you say in a back room. I'm not sure you make it, but he's made it national policy to say, listen, suburbs, we're not putting low-income housing where you are. And I, to Stephen's point earlier, that is a very effective message to a lot of voters right now. And it's funny because when was the last time that NIMBY was sort of national policy? But that's basically what he's saying, and it has a very receptive audience, I think.
But he's also taking that message and taking it a step further, which the gall of this is making me frustrated. He's saying to Black voters, don't pay attention to systemic inequality. Don't pay attention to the racist stuff I say. Don't pay attention to the racists I pal around with or try to get to be on my side. All you need to worry about is economics, right? I'm gonna make sure you've got a job. I'm gonna make sure you get a loan. I'm gonna make sure HBCUs have what they need. I'm gonna make sure that we do criminal justice reform and these other things. Don't worry about racism. Don't worry about inequality. And I know that does not appeal to Black voters, at least not.
I'm not sure that that's fully without an audience too, though, Stephen. I think that, for instance, I think there's some Black suburbanites who are like, yeah, I don't want low-income housing. I've worked to get here. I don't really want that next to me either. I think there might be a few people of color who are receptive to that message too.
Well, it's definitely being aimed at suburban white women at the moment, though. I saved your neighborhood. I saved your neighborhood by not allowing Section 8 housing in your community.
What?
I mean, and I'm not sure I don't think he actually took any steps to do anything about that, to be honest with you.
Just wrap up Cory Booker in a bow, put a stamp on his head and just mail him off to me. I mean, he doesn't understand what suburban housewives are into these days. I mean, apparently he hasn't been watching enough television.
I'm taking notes for a new reality show. Cory Booker is living with me.
It'll be like the flat Stanley thing that your kids do in elementary school. To be like,
yes.
Where's Cory?
All right. Well, hey, look, Kristen Welker last night did actually bring up the question of immigration, which was such a huge part of the 2016 campaign. Immigration was one of the big things that propelled Donald Trump to the presidency, and bringing it to the point where there are 525 kids right now that they just don't know where their parents are. They lost the parents. They may have deported them without reuniting them with their children first. We don't know, and they're trying to figure it out.
And did you hear what he said?
Go ahead.
The little aside that came where somebody said 525 kids don't know where their parents are, and he said, "Good."
I don't know that he did, though. There's a couple of things.
What do you think he said, Greg?
Go ahead is what it sounded like he was saying, and so like I said, but that's the difference between.
Like good to me, but...
Well, like I said, I'm going to go back and listen to it again because if he did say good, that's pretty damn awful.
This is the issue that should put Donald Trump, Rod Rosenstein, Jeff Sessions, and every other one of those MFers
Stephen Miller
in the dock at The Hague, in sometime in 2021. I mean, it's just these people belong in the International Criminal Court. That was a human rights violation unlike any that I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, it wasn't Rwanda, but it was pretty bad. So,
well, but what it highlighted to me is that, for a guy who ran on the issue of immigration, this was one of the first times where he's actually had to unpack what his policy actually is and what it's actually accomplished. It hasn't accomplished anything. He's rebuilt a little bit of existing wall so far, something that he said was going to get done. He put the kids and separated them from their parents, but really hasn't done a whole lot else other than try to ban Muslims from coming into the country. And you look at it, has the immigration policy, has he fixed immigration in America? Has he done anything to actually make the system work any better in any capacity? It doesn't seem like he actually has.
But Craig, I think here again, his argument to his base is keeping them glued in. He says, look, I didn't make those cages. The Obama administration built those cages. They were there. There were family separations that happened under the Obama administration. The president wouldn't brag about this, and I don't think Barack Obama would either, but there were actually more deportations during the Obama administration than there have been during the Trump administration. So I think my overall take, though, again, on this debate was, as it's been, not only on this issue, but on all of them, was as it's been now for over a year. I'm not sure there's just no movement happening. People are rusted into their positions right now. The president just keeps shooting people on Fifth Avenue. Time and time again, something has popped up that would have a Chinese bank account. Barack Obama was right. That would have killed him.
Oh yeah.
And he keeps marching on, and I think that and same thing with Joe Biden. Whenever problems pop up around him, his base doesn't seem, his folks don't seem to be leaving him. There's just no movement going on. Well, this is a turnout election, and that's what it's been, and that's what it'll be.
And I voted 2 weeks ago. I think a whole lot of people already have.
The debate?
No, I did not wait for the debate.
I like to vote in person on election day, but I was like, the locusts are probably coming on November the 3rd. There is no telling what it will look like by then. I was like, what? I didn't say like what else could happen because something will answer that question.
Well, it seems to me though that if we're gonna, if these sorts of revelations are going to be important in a campaign, we're going to need a September surprise as opposed to an October surprise going forward. I mean, President Trump last night tried to make some hay out of this Hunter Biden story that, of course, the New York Post put out last week. And then the Wall Street Journal had a couple of opinion pieces yesterday. But then their newsroom came back and said there was nothing to the story. And I think for me, I'm reading
embarrassing.
Well, the little schism between the opinion side and the news side of the Wall Street Journal is something to watch for us journalism nerds. Because it's really unusual to see that much disconnect between the two sides. I mean, they're not supposed to necessarily be in cahoots, obviously, Stephen, but it is weird to watch the Wall Street Journal at war with itself.
Well, then that's an old battle. I mean, that's been going on for 30 years at the Journal since the Journal, in my opinion, took a turn away from principled conservatism to just naked intellectual dishonesty. I mean, it is one of the worst offenders, I think, of really hypocritical opinion journalism. And these pieces that they posted about the New York Post story are a great example. I mean, it's garbage. I mean, you have a massive number of people in the intelligence community saying this is garbage, and it's garbage peddled by a foreign country trying to interfere in our election. And then you've got one of the largest newspapers in the country republishing, the lies.
What about the National Intelligence Director, Stephen, though, John Ratcliffe, saying that's not true, that it's not from Russia?
Well,
that really complicates this picture for a lot of folks.
Yeah, well, he's working for the president, and the people who work for the president, if they want to keep their jobs, say crazy stuff. I've got a lot of emails from people going, "Why aren't you covering this?" And I'm sure because the narrative. Well, and what I said, though, here's the thing that still troubles me. So the original reporter at the Post wouldn't put his byline on it. Right.
Yeah.
There is not a single story that Channel 4 would ever let go out over our airwaves if a reporter said,
the reporter said, I don't want
my name to that.
Right. Anonymous.
And at the bottom, at the very root of this story, let's say that even 80% of it is true. So Hunter Biden decided to try to use the fact that his dad was vice president to make money, right? To make money for himself, to make money for his family, something that we've seen relatives of politicians do over and over again. And let's not even talk about the Trump family and the way in which that has been a criminal enterprise over the last 4 years. But what's also true and what's also clear in the reporting is it didn't work. He tried to do this, and his dad wouldn't participate.
Yeah,
even if this all happened, Joe Biden said, "Well, I'm not gonna do that."
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of Billy Carter and Billy Bear. Failed venture, didn't work.
Right. I mean,
and Bill Clinton's brother, Roger Clinton. I mean, everybody who's ever had a sibling or some family member that we all
decides. Yeah, they all decide that this is a ticket to some fame or fortune. And the question is what the politician does. Joe Biden didn't meet with these people. Everybody has confirmed that. So what is the scandal is the question I keep asking.
Here's the one thing though, if you read all the Post stories, and I read them all, and one of them, they had emails from Hunter Biden, and it was like a confessional email that he had to his dad saying that, I'm a screw up, I'm ruining your political life, I'm a terrible human being because of my problems. And there's, Joe Biden basically consoling his son, telling him he loves him. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so you're trying to paint Hunter Biden as a screw up and an addict. And maybe 10 years ago, that thing could have made a politician look bad. But I think the opioid crisis has opened up a whole lot of people's eyes in this country as to what addiction is and what it's like to have a family member or a friend go through something horrible. People are much more empathetic and sympathetic to those situations than they would have been even a decade ago. I don't think it has anything other than people feeling some sort of sadness and empathy for his situation, because we all know somebody who's had a family member deal with a problem like this, or a good friend, or somebody,
Right.
Ourselves, going through trying to fix some problems in our lives. And I don't think that carries as much political heft as it used to. I think we're a lot less judgmental about these things than we used to be.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's one of those few things that's happening right now that you can say this is better than it used to be. There are a few things. I always say camping equipment, stereo equipment is better than it used to be, and also our attitudes toward.
Well, you mean a politician can actually admit that they smoked pot once in their life? I mean, thankfully we've got that. Okay, all right. Well, we've been going a while. We should probably start thinking about wrapping this up here. Steven turned off his camera. I hope he's not pulling a Tubin.
Where'd I go?
I thought I was bad when this show was.
He's tucking in his shirt back there. By the way, we're never going to be able to use that phrase the same way. Look at Devin's just like shaking his head. He's like, "Why did I agree to do this? Why did I agree to do this?" All right, we should think about Schmuck of the Week here. We have nominees. Nancy wants to go first with Schmuck of the Week. Who do you have, Nancy?
I have Jeffrey Toobin, and I have Jeffrey Toobin because of obvious reasons. I just, I'm an older person now, and I have long ago gave up the idea that the people that I like for one thing also have to be good in another area. I call it the Miles Davis thing, right? Yeah, he's back. The Miles Davis thing. It's like you can say Miles Davis made some of the most beautiful jazz music in the world and was a terrible human being. A drug addict, a wife beater, all that stuff. So as somebody who cannot stand the work of Bob Woodward's, or at least his book-length stuff, I just can't read it. It's so terrible. I've always enjoyed reading Jeffrey Toobin's books. But as often happens when something like this little mishap, you start to hear other stories about him. So I'm just going to say, Jeffrey Toobin, you're 60 years old, and you could not wait to do that until you were in a private place. So
all right, so Jeffrey Toobin gets a vote. I'm sure Giuliani's probably going to get one too. All right, go ahead, Portia. Go ahead.
Who lays down on a bed to tuck in your shirt? I'm just trying to figure out, why are you in a hotel room laying on a bed tucking in your shirt? Your shirt, and then it didn't even happen that way, according to him. Like, there was a time when he was America's mayor. Like, we really, across party lines, thought maybe he could be a good president. And actually, he's an idiot, which still means he could be a president, because not
a disqualifier.
Think about, really, I remember reading about Giuliani cracking down on Times Square and getting New York in this Disneyland kind of sense, where broken windows was this thing. We really kind of had a reverence for what Giuliani was doing. I guess some circles did, and now he's laying down with young girls tucking in his pants, his shirt tail. Yeah, what is going on over there? I know they're chilling for Trump right now, but somebody needs to take a break and get some outside of Zoom calls and Borat movies and all of that. Take a second.
This is another thing, Portia.
I'm watching it tonight, so.
This is another thing. He's 76. Okay, Toobin was 76. At any point in a man's life, do the fires cool even a little bit?
Even a little bit.
Always grabbing at that thing.
Didn't Strom Thurmond get? Wasn't he a dad at age 80 or something like that? I'm pretty sure.
He was 72 when he.
Yeah, the 72. There you go. And Cary Grant, if I'm not mistaken, also was about that age. All right, so we got Toobin and Giuliani out of the way. Who wants to go next? Who wants to go next for Schmuck of the Week?
I'm afraid that I was going to loop the two of them together for my Schmuck of the Week. And
old white guys doing bad things.
Jeffrey Toobin has never been happier to see Rudolph Giuliani.
Yeah.
You think that was going to be how in the world was anybody going to displace Jeffrey Toobin from the the depraved, oversexed headline of the week, and yet Rudy found a way to do it. I'm not a huge fan of Borat. I really don't love that sort of comedy that just puts people in uncomfortable situations and expects them to act in anything other than a really goofy, awkward, sadly entertaining way. But this was new. This was new territory, man. I found myself wondering, what if Borat what if he just would have let it go a little bit longer? And I know he couldn't, because it was about to get out of hand. But good gosh almighty! And that this guy was America's mayor at one time. What's happened to that reputation since has been an extraordinary thing.
And then he is still the president's personal lawyer. I mean,
yeah, still is.
Well, we shall see about that. I'm not sure how much longer that's going to last. But all right, Stephen, you got a nominee?
Well, the president. Oh, here, one more quick thing.
Go ahead, please.
And I am shocked that nobody brings this up more during the campaign. This guy is going to need a lawyer when he's out of office, because for all of the talk about how there was nothing in the Mueller report about collusion, what there were 8, 9, or 10 findings of obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
I can't believe that Joe Biden has not brought up the fact or the possibility that as soon as he's out of office, he could get hit with charges on those. Now, I don't know if that case is necessarily being made, and maybe that's why nobody's talking about it seriously. But that's still out there.
Yeah.
That may be the only reason that Trump is still running, is to try to avoid Letitia James and all the people that are going to come after him the moment his presidency is over. They are just waiting for him not to have the full force of the Justice Department, which is unfortunate that he definitely has that, to try to avoid him being brought on criminal charges, which he
probably also going to have a hard time raising $400 million to pay off whatever debts may be there if he's not in office.
Well, real quick, Nancy, who was the what publication had that article you posted yesterday about one of the women that's accused Donald Trump?
That was The Atlantic.
That was compelling stuff.
A very interesting thing where they have hired E. Jean Carroll, who, of course, if you know, is the woman who was suing him for defamation after she claimed he raped him. Anyway, to interview all of these women who have also accused him of, and the interviews, they're posted as Q&As, but they're very conversational. You know, it's like it's not a traditional, like, you know, journalist asks a question and the subject answers. It's more like a conversation between two women who share this key experience. And that was the one that I posted yesterday was the one with what's her name, Jessica. I forget. She's the oldest of the bunch. So when you see her face, she's almost 80 now. Yeah. You know, it's kind of like, whoa. But and of course he plays on that. Ooh, she's never could be good looking enough for me. Blah blah blah. You know. But she was the one he allegedly assaulted on the plane.
Yeah, so, and it was believable and gross.
And there's a each of those women about how he like got them alone and he grabbed them in the same way, like
that's exactly right.
Mouth against their mouth, like he kissed them completely unexpectedly, like they just goodbye, and he just violently kisses them and starts and then goes further if he can. Like there's a complete, he's a predator. There's a complete pattern of behavior that you look for in sex crimes to see if this person is a repeat offender, and Donald Trump fits.
He's a template. They all go according to the template that was laid out in the Access Hollywood tape.
Yeah. All right, Stephen Henderson, Schmuck of the Week. You got one?
My Schmuck of the Week is actually John James.
Wow.
Who, I think he entered this campaign with really high hopes. I mean, he didn't do badly 2 years ago when he ran against Debbie Scillian. He lost, but he lost fair and square and made a good effort at it. It was a Democratic wave year that hurt him. He came into this campaign against a first-term incumbent with some real momentum, and I think all he really had to do was define himself beyond the sort of Republican standard and the ideological labels. And he just hasn't done it. I mean, we're a week out from the election, and I think he doesn't have it. I think this is somebody who's quite smart and accomplished, but hasn't spent a lot of time thinking about or mulling through the intricacies of public policy.
But it's interesting because last week on Flashpoint, you pointed out in our conversation following my interviews with the two of them, this has been a pretty effective campaign. His commercials have been excellent. And there's a reason why Gary Peters' lead is not the same as Joe Biden's in the state.
That's absolutely true. I mean, for all of what I'm saying in criticism of him, he could still win, I suppose. I mean, I don't think that's likely.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at another kind of Democratic wave year, and it's going to be really tough to flip
I think
that.
ticket splitting. I think we're seeing a lot of ticket splitting on the Republican side because John James hasn't done anything to tick off the Republicans the way that Donald Trump has.
Maybe. Here's another stat that I've been throwing out about John James the last week. You go back to 2018 when he was running against Debbie Stabenow. The top of the ticket then was the governor's race, right? Bill Schuette versus Gretchen Whitmer. John James got 75,000 fewer votes than Bill Schuette did. That's a huge fall off.
Yeah, it is.
There's always a fall off between the top and the bottom, or the second part of the ticket. But the fall off for him was significant. And I believe that has to do with outstate white voters who typically vote Republican, who very quietly are not going to vote for an African American. They may say they will. They may say that they'll support the party no matter what. But when they get in the booth, they're just not gonna. They're not gonna pull that lever. And so,
Stephen,
watching that fall off will be really interesting this time.
Stephen, do you think he'll pick up tickets like black ticket splitters who are,
I think he will get more.
About Gary Peterson.
He will get more votes out of the city than he should as a Republican, and that has to do not only with John and his outreach to certain black constituencies, but it's also a weakness that Gary has left open over that first term. I mean, he's done a good job of appealing to the places in the state that didn't know him before he was a senator and trying to shore up votes there. But he has not closed that deal with black voters in Detroit the way that he probably should have at this point. And this election will be a reminder to him, I think, no matter what the outcome, that he's got work to do. In Detroit. With black voters.
And real quick, I just want to say, if you have not made up your mind yet, you haven't voted yet, and you're still trying to figure out that Senate race, go back, watch last week's Flashpoint. You can find it online. Find it at WDIV.com because Devin did a good job with the two candidates there. We didn't get a debate between the senatorial candidates this year. This is the closest you're going to get. I thought there was some telling stuff in there last week, so thanks for getting that done, Devin. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Sunday mornings, Flashpoint, it's worth watching. All right, my schmuck of the week, before we get ready to go, is a guy named Bernie Pagel. Now, you've never heard of Bernie Pagel because he's the manager of a trailer park in Fort Morgan, Colorado. He sent a note to the tenants in the trailer park that basically said, if Joe Biden wins, I'm going to double your rent. And if Donald Trump wins, I will freeze the rent for 2 years. Now, I'm not sure, but that certainly sounds like an attempt to sway somebody's vote. It seems to me that just might be a tad illegal, and the elections officials in Colorado believe so too. They're paying him a visit. So, Mr. Pagel, you are indeed my schmuck of the week. Do not threaten people's rent. Don't do crap like that. Let them vote the way they want to, and just don't be an ass, because that is the ultimate ass move right there. Schmuck of the week.
I love the drill down on that.
That's a twist on the old Kentucky vote swaying tactic of buying people liquor, which is why liquor is not sold legally in the state of Kentucky on election day.
But that's at least a bribe. This is more like extortion. So,
that's actually how Nolan Finley got into politics. So let's not.
Liquor, my vote can't change at this point. But if somebody wants to try to bribe me with,
with booze, free wine.
It's a good year to ask. I'm ready.
Yeah, that's right. Just send the whistle pig over here, everybody. Let's see. All right. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up. I want to thank my guests for being here. Devin Scillian, thanks so much for your time today. I always appreciate it. And again, Sunday mornings, Flashpoint, 10 o'clock, Channel 4 every week. Stephen Henderson, 9 a.m., Monday through Friday on WDET. Don't forget about that. Appreciate it. Portia Roberson. Of course, just go over to Focus Hope to see her. We always appreciate you being here as well.
Money to Focus Hope. Go and look at Food Drive or something like that. Right?
That's exactly right. And Nancy Derringer, thank you as always. And again, Nancy's work appears at DeadlineDetroit.com, where you can find this video as well if you didn't get to watch it live. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering the broadcast today. Also, special thanks to my sponsor, James Oliver Coffee, JamesOliverCoffee.com. We appreciate their support of this program as well. And everybody, have a fantastic weekend. And since Alan is not here, I'm going to give Nancy the honors to say,
Stay home safely.
Nice.
My name's ML Elric. I'm an investigative reporter and a connoisseur of fine yogurts. I know a little bit about Detroit. I know a little bit about deadlines. And I'm asking you to become a member of DeadlineDetroit.com. Like me, I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm making a monthly donation. My wife is making a monthly donation. I know that seems redundant, but they need the money, and the money goes to a good place. Getting the story out, getting the truth out. Because if we don't support local journalism, there's some people a couple blocks away from here who are going to get away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to cost you a whole lot more than just a few bucks out of your pocket every month. Go to DeadlineDetroit.com, become a member. You'll see it's really easy at the top of the website. Give early, give often, give generously. Just give a damn. That's the best way I know how.
The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is sponsored by James Oliver Coffee Company at jamesolivercoffee.com. James Oliver is a second-generation family-owned and Detroit-based coffee roaster, offering 19 different blends of freshly roasted coffee. The company pioneered link temperature roasting, and they source the best beans from around the world to create an outstanding coffee experience, no matter which beans you choose. To start, try the Alma Mater blend. James Oliver Coffee gives $5 for each bag of its Alma Mater blend to the Detroit Public Schools Foundation. And don't forget, use the promo code CFSHOW, that's CFSHOW, to get 15% off your first order. James Oliver Coffee, available at select grocery stores in Metro Detroit and, of course, at jamesolivercoffee.com. Remember, use the promo code CFSHOW to get 15% off your first order. That's jamesolivercoffee.com.